please.
Matt Elliott,
Present.
Jon Draper, Tal Rancourt, Pam Brewer,
Here.
Jack Conley,
Here.
and we have Council Member Everhart.
Yes, here.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda and the meetings, the minutes to the meeting of last meeting?
I'll move to accept the minutes and the agenda.
Been moved. There a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly second. Will you poll the board, please, Ms. Eve?
Pam Brewer,
Yes.
Jack Conley,
Yes.
Matt Elliott.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, utility report.
Okay, I apologize for my voice. I lost it last night. I don't know what's going on yet. So don't feel terrible, but sound terrible. So let's start at the beginning. We had our progress meeting this morning on the wastewater treatment plant. Everything's moving along on schedule so far. So that's good news. We don't have any change orders. We do expect one coming. A small change order. There's 3 existing blowers on the sludge processing piece of it that did not have VFDs on them. We like to put VFDs on them. It's about over 5 years, about $10,000 a year in energy savings if we put VFDs on those blowers. So they're going to come back with a proposed change order for those to put those VFDs on. That's at our request, not the contractors. CROM is starting to mobilize and setting rebar to start pouring the floors of the 2 clarifiers, 55-foot diameter tanks, about 20 foot deep. So they're going to start that construction process over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Things will start coming out of the ground. Right now it's a 20-foot hole in the ground, so things will start coming out of the ground. And we didn't get it put together for this one, but we hope to have a slideshow for you at the next one so you can see. There'll be a lot more to see too, because primarily for the last month or 2, it's mostly been just digging a big hole, doing some underground piping that you really don't see anything. So, but we'll have a little bit of a slideshow for you next month, so you can see that.
I'd like to get out there for a tour when it gets going.
Absolutely. I think that once things start coming up, if maybe after the first of the year, you'll see some tanks and there'll be a lot more to see what's going on. We can do that. Absolutely. So the water main loan application, we got some comments back from DEP on the loan application. They wanted some changes on a couple of agreements, so those will come before the you'll see them. They're minor changes, but for the loan agreement, you'll see them at the January meeting, and then they'll go to the council for the January meeting. So changes on the bulk service agreement, changes on our resolution. It didn't specify that the mayor had authority to sign some. Anyway, but those will all be on the January meeting agenda. So lift station bids, I put my director's report in wrong because today is not the 2nd. Anyway, bid openings were yesterday, and we'll go ahead and talk about that now. That's part of what I handed you out is we received 2 bids, one from KDL Underground, and one from Go Underground. So both local contractors, the only 2 that bid on the project. Amazingly, on a $3 million bid, they were only $3,000, $4,000 apart on their bids. So I know the bids are pretty good. The disappointing part is they are about double what we had anticipated. And compared to what we thought we had a pretty good number based on where we bid the Lake Placid Camping Conference Center wastewater line and lift station a year and a half ago, that the numbers wouldn't have increased by where they have, but they have increased substantially since then. Anyway, so I have not had a chance to talk to the contractor, and so I don't have any recommendations for you to make to council, but council will hear a recommendation on Monday night to somehow reduce this. We're working on if we can cut out the force mains. We have to do all of this project at some point in time in order to fully complete the Camp and Conference Center project and fully complete the other septic sewer conversions that are coming down the line. but the funding shortage is the issue. So I have to talk to our DEP at the grant. We have, Kimley Horn is evaluating our blank on what we call it. Anyway, our master plan that coordinates all our lift stations and our force mains to make sure that we can get by with postponing the force main part of that. My plan is, or thought is, that we can do the 2 lift stations and get those done with the funding where we are at today, and then come back at a future date and do the connecting force main between the 2. So the bid sheets, which is a couple pages in, but they're bid separately. So there's pieces of there are 3 tab sheets in there, and then within each tab sheet are line item bid numbers. So we'll have to negotiate with the contractor as long as he's willing to, but we're going to try and narrow that down and get it down so we just do the 2 lift stations now, and then come back in a future funding date, future funding cycle to get the rest of it completed. So that's kind of where we're at on those 2 lift stations, but we have to do all of the project. It's just a matter of getting the funding to complete it. So we're not sure. So that is funded with 3 grants. It's funded with a federal wastewater grant of $600,000, a Rural Infrastructure Fund Department of Commerce grant of $570,000, and then part of that is out of the $40 million grant, because we had to enlarge those lift stations to pick up the South Plant and Lake Pearl, Serena, and Lake Placid. So those lift stations got enlarged as part of the $40 million grant. So those are the 3 grants that fund this project. But with all the pricing increases we have had to, as y'all all know, we've had to keep cutting that back, and we're going to have to do that on this project too. And so I'm not sure at this point in time. We did the bid opening yesterday at 2. We're not sure at this point in time where we're going to be until we talk to the contractor and make sure the contractor is agreeable with the reduction in scope. If he's not, then we're going to have to deny these bids. We'd have to rebid without the force main portion of it. So I believe he will be agreeable, but we don't know that yet. So pipe bursting project, they're doing sidewalk and curbing down Interlake. They had torn out some of the electrical between the street lights. They've had that repaired. They're working on getting the irrigation back where they've cut some of those lines. They've got almost the irrigation repaired except for between Main and Pine. So once that's complete, then they can, they'll do the asphalt paving that they have to do on that to complete that project. There's discussion between the town, Keep Lake Placid beautiful, some of the downtown, the CRA and the merchants on the landscaping in those islands. So we are not replacing the plants. Their contract would have put back in exactly what was there. They want to do some changes and stuff. So we're just going to take that money that was allocated in that contract, and it will go to replace those plants once Keep Lake Placid beautiful and everybody agrees on what should go back into those islands. So the islands will be bare for a little bit. I hope not for a long time, but for a little bit they'll be bare, just so everybody knows. That's a why, is that there's going to be some changes in that landscaping on Interlake. And then the wastewater lift station, the LPC3, the Conference Center lift station, they're supposed to complete piping in the next couple of days. They still got to pour the slab, put the panel in, and they're waiting on Duke for power. So we hope in the next couple of weeks, but I've been saying that for a month, or longer. So anyway, at any rate, it should be complete by the end of December. There shouldn't be any delays past that, and that then will be energized, and the Camping Conference Center will be flowing into our main plant. So the last thing that's not on the agenda is the other piece of paper that I handed out for you, and it's going to change on the backside for recommendations because of these other projects and the funding requests. But I want you to really, no decisions. We'll have a deeper conversation with it about next month. But as you look at moving forward, where we move forward, and the recommendations to council on which projects are next and where we go next. And the reason I said, I'll jump ahead, the reason I said my recommendations are going to change is because we're not going to get, with these pricing, on these two lift stations and force mains that we know have to reduce. We know that the south plant, which those bids are due on the 23rd of December, so we can get that money allocated by the end of the year, which is a grant requirement, part of the $40 million grant requirement, is to get funds allocated. That one's going to come in substantially higher than we anticipated, so I don't believe we're going to be able to do the closure of Tomoka as part of the $40 million grant. So my recommendation for the next grant cycle is going to be getting that lift station and force main to get Tomoka closed and then tie in these other force mains so we can get that, which will push septic to sewer conversion projects back out a little bit further. So, but we still need to set priorities. We have new council members. We need to kind of set some priorities. The boards need to make recommendations on what will be the next grant cycle as you move forward, and so what will be applied for in the grants, because we're running through, you have DEP grants available, and you have, there's some 319, there's 2 or 3 different grants, and there's federal earmarks that we can all apply for. Don't know where we'll get any of them, but we can apply for them. And so we kind of need to set that priority in with the new council. We had a priority from the old council, but we need a new priority from the new council on what projects they want to see in which order, so that we know, because the next DEP grant cycle is going to be in May for that application, and we'll need to start preparing that a couple of months in advance. So look through it, think about it. I just kind of laid out some talking points. We have total flows as what they go in and where they are at. We haven't done any updated cost analysis on any of it to see where that would go, as which project is chosen, and then we'll get updated cost analysis. That'll tie into the grant application. But that's kind of where that is. So just something for y'all to look at and think about over the next month, and then we'll get into it a little bit more at the January meeting. So that's all I have. If anybody has any questions, comments, we'll address that. Yes.
You were talking about the next May being the date for the next grants to be applied for. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that's the DEP tends to move it around a little bit, but this past year it opened in May. So that's when that's your initial, when you can apply for the grants.
Okay.
It's once a year, and they shift it. It may be May, June, or July, but they'll shift it in that time range.
Okay.
That's when you have to do your application for DEP for the wastewater grants.
And then approximately how long before you find out whether you got any of the grants? Is there
3 to 4 months.
3 or 4 months?
Yep. And then agreements take another 2 to 3 months after that before you can actually get it signed, ready to go, and then actually go out to bid. The good thing is most of these projects are designed, depending on where we go with them, so it wouldn't take long after to actually get out to bid. Federal earmarks are a little different. I think they're due in the summer, and then you find out, well, we're pretty sure we're getting $2.5 million, but we don't have anything on it yet from the federal earmark. So, but we applied for that in, I think, August or September, maybe before that. State legislative earmarks are January, I believe, for a legislative earmark, if we were going to go for that. So, and then we have CDBG that you can apply for. We have to close out the pipe bursting project before we can apply for another CDBG grant. That has to be within town limits. And so we can apply for that, but I don't know what the date is on the CDBGs. Similar thing, SRFs is a rotating. There's like 3 times a year you can apply for SRF grants. That's primarily a loan grant combination. But again, we have a water and a wastewater open right now. You have to close one of those before you can apply for another one. So That's kind of where the cycles run. But the big one that we're looking for, the primary funder, is the big DEP grant. And that's the May cycle.
Uh-huh. And just out of curiosity, we're going to be hooking up Tomoka Heights eventually into the. Now, what about the hospital? Is that?
The hospital's on the Tomoka's system.
Oh, it's on Tomoka's system,
Yes,
so
so
it will
they
be
would come in,
hooked
yeah,
with
they
it.
would come in when we do that lift station, and to get the economies of what we're building, we have to bring Tomoka in with it, because otherwise we're still, right now we run 3 plants, we have to visit 3 plants, we have to do testing at all 3 plants. So Tomoka, which is why the recommendation of bring Tomoka on would be the next priority project to get them closed and brought in, so we have that kind of economy of scale of running 1 plant.
Okay, one more thing. I think I read or heard someplace about where eventually if certain areas that get hooked into the new sanitary sewer system, if you don't provide them with city water, how do you figure out what they pay for?
So there's 2 options, and we touched on that last time a little bit. You can either do a flat rate charge for sewer, which is just a guess, and you just do it on what your average is, and that's what everybody pays on a flat rate charge. You can you'd have to put a clock, an hour meter in the control panel, wire in an hour meter, and then go read those on a monthly basis in order to do that. Our intention is that everywhere that we have designed to go out and put septic sewer in, we've also designed to put in water along with it.
Okay.
Those projects have not been funded. That will come before you guys and the council on a future date to do SRF. And I'm excluding Placid Lakes in that discussion, and we'll talk about it in a second. But but we would put in water, and then they'd have a water meter, and then that would solve. That's the easiest way to do it. Placid Lakes is either going to be one of the 3. If Placid Lakes would do the billing for us based on their water meter, then that's a revenue stream for them. But that's we haven't had those discussions, and I don't know that Joe did at any point, because we're so far down the line of when we're going to get to there at this point with the funding. I don't know whether that's going to be in 2 years, 5 years, or who knows when. So, but those are, you got 3 options. You can do a flat rate charge for a grinder station based on an average. You can do an hour meter, and then you know what the pumps pump and how long it runs, and so you can calculate fairly accurately there. It's not something that they put in their panels today, but you could retrofit, or if we're going to buy 1,000 of them, I'm sure they would modify them and put them in for us. So, and bill them that way. Then you just have to go and read that hour meter on a monthly basis, similar to the way we do water meters.
Okay.
So there's options.
Yeah, and if there's any areas where they don't have grinder pumps, where they can use just gravity, right, then it would have to be just a flat rate basis or whatever.
Yeah,
Average.
if you're doing gravity somewhere that doesn't have water, then it's definitely a flat rate. So,
Okay, thank you.
When you present to the council to ask for the list of priorities, would you provide what the prior council had for priorities, what your would suggest for priorities, and the costs of each?
Okay, yeah.
Help us along?
I can try and do part of the new costs, because the old costs I can do what they had originally estimated, but we're going on 3 years now.
Well, that'd be a start, anyway.
It's a starting point. Yeah, actually, you can just double them or triple them, and then you'll be maybe close. But yes, I'll do that. We can put that together so you see where the priorities were, and have that discussion of where they're at. And like I said, the back page on my recommendation is going to change, because the first thing for the next grant cycle, from my perspective, based on yesterday's bids, and then what expected is to come out in 3 weeks for the next bid, are substantially higher than what we had anticipated based on a relatively recent bid. The lift stations are literally double in price. We paid $420,000 for the camping conference center lift station, which they haven't completed yet. and the low bid on the Marquardt lift station is 700. The Go Underground's bid was 900, so they literally doubled their bid on that lift station, so.
Yeah, we can expect 2 to 3 times more, but at least it would give some kind of an idea.
Idea what they cost. That affects what your grant ask is gonna be. Because depending on where you're gonna go, you're gonna have to stay, according to DEP, they're gonna be offering grants between 5 and 10 million. That's gonna be your range. You're not gonna see their funding sources currently are not where you're gonna see a grant more than that. So that's our range that we're gonna be. So if it's depending on the project, you're gonna break that up. And I'll use Placid Lakes, for example, would have to be broken up. You would not be able to do all of Placid Lakes in one project. You can combine some of the smaller projects. Tomoka Force Main, maybe Lake June, the old section of Lake June that was part of that you could do that. And then pick up, and you got Lake June Hills, so you got 2 or 3 smaller projects that are designed in there that you could combine to get that between $5 and $10 million project.
Okay, yeah.
So,
I would think that the priority should be impaired lakes first, because that's what the grant was for. And then as the town, you should be more concerned about, the people in town and make sure that you have enough sewer capacity for all of your customers in town before you even consider going outside of town. That's just, I know that the DEP encourages you to service your customers first before you look elsewhere. And I think that should be recommended to the town council.
and that's why I said we'll get into it a little bit more. You'll see that I kind of broke it out. All of the original amounts are there on the flows, and so Southtown does the majority of the rest of Lake Placid. That's that Southtown component. It still misses Michigan, Ohio, what I call the State Street area. There's a little area in there that does not have, sewer. So that's not designed, but Southtown is already designed, which is everything from Interlake kind of down to 27, that whole section in there that doesn't have any sewer currently. And then I break it out, whether it's a lake focus or whether it's a town focus, and it's not my decision, it's the town decision. They both need to be done, which is no question about it.
The thing is to set the priorities, and the priority
Yes.
should be the impaired lakes first.
Yep. So, anyway, so that's kind of where it's at, and that's why we'll get into it a little bit more. I'll have some more information for you at the January meeting, and I'll be asking for recommendations, so y'all can think about it, how y'all want to kind of look at it, and I'll make sure we get emailed out to John and Tal the documents early, so you have time to kind of study them. And I just wanted to give you this a little up front, so you had time to think about it, and talk about it as you get ready. But January we'll have those. I'll be asking for some priorities from you and the council, so that we know what to prepare for that kind of next grant application. It gives us time to get ready and get it into line.
Anything else? Okay. Mark, did you have something, or? Okay. Pam? Yes?
Hello, Pam Pinterest, Greater Lake Placid area. Reminder again, Swift Mud Cooperative Grants. That's a 3 to 4 year out. I think they could be a fundamental help as you try to expand into other areas. But it's a process, and you got to plan for it. Number 2, within the past year, this committee voted to have the priority areas of the North Lake Placid, the Lake Mirror Drive, and South Lake Placid. Then when it went to the town council the next week, the town council voted, no, let me back up. It's reversed. This committee voted for the Southtown and then Lake Pearl and Lake Serena. That's where your priorities were. Then it went to the town council the following week, and they did the priorities like Mirror Drive, North Lake Placid, South Lake Placid. It's priorities. Not saying you can't, but that was the vote, and that was the focus. You can change your mind, of course, but then once you make a plan, I think you kind of need to stick to it, or strategic plan. I guess my comment would be on January 2026, you're gonna have 1 million gallons a day wastewater treatment plant online, up and running, theoretically, hopefully. So from that, in the sheet you gave out, the capacity that actually should be in use at that time or needed is about 200,000, or what's your approximation?
Are you asking what we'll be using out of that?
Right,
At that time?
I saw that you had access of 1.2 million gallons, but if the focus is to close down to big total, so.
When we close those plants down, we'll be using about 300,000 of the million.
Okay, 300,000, so you have 700,000 capacity. I guess it all comes back to me for revenue, cash flow. And I agree with what you said in your sheet about the $40 million DEP grant was septic to sewer. It's not for new developments. That was the whole thing. You had your 9 different planning areas. Highway Park needs this, so-and-so needs that. And you needed the whole 40 million to do that. However, at that time, I think it originally, I don't know, the wastewater treatment plant was supposed to be 23 million or something, and it came in at 34 million, and then the planning, so you basically use that 40 million for the planning consultants in the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, I'm just asking, correct?
That's correct.
So, you're basing a system off of expansion on grants from state and federal. I would think that a lot of, I guess I see that as a part, the loan component and the grant component, but also customer base. You bill people, they pay, you make revenue, and then you're able to maybe expand in that way also. I guess I'm asking, I know last meeting you said y'all aren't trying to make money, but I'm not saying make money for the town to be used on beautification, make money to reinvest back into your central sewer system.
So current rate basis on what we're doing pays the debt service on our existing plant, which pays off next year. So you could take that, if the town chose, then they could take that, fund another SRF loan to do additional wastewater and expand the process and have that debt service. That's certainly within the town's capability and authority. The north plant, that 2.5 million, just so you know, the federal earmark is going towards the northeast Lake Placid piece of that. So that number 1 priority, which is what that grant was, that earmark was applied for, and we received. We asked for 7, but we got 2.5. So we'll see how far it goes, and then make adjustments from there. And that's, as we keep moving through this, you have to keep making adjustments because of the price differences.
Good luck. No. I don't know. It just seems to me that when the new wastewater treatment plant is up and running, you're going to have a lot of capacity. And I think it's going to sit idle 10 years, 20 years, because you won't be able to, if you're going to, the process, you're going to wait to get a federal or state grant to be able to hook up the next 150 people. I mean, we know how much time this has taken to get us to this point, and even Lake Placid Campus Conference Center, whether it's 4 or 5 years, it's still not up and running. So, and they brought money to the table themselves. So this, you're going forward, all right. And the last thing with the Camping Conference Center, I've seen a lot of activity. We own the land to the north of there. I've seen a lot of activity on our property. I would just ask that they clean up our land and return it to how it was before they started. But there's used tires now and a bunch of concrete and all kind of other stuff. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Not, it's 2 o'clock. I'll declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.